Alright, so just want to introduce Greegan from Snozbot Games, and Chris is going to talk about text-based adventures in Unity, so give him a big DIT welcome, will you?
So thanks for having me here. So this came out of a talk I did last week at Fermented Poly, which is a programmer meetup, games programming meetup that happens once a month or so. And so Brian saw this talk and he invited me to come in and to talk to you guys today and just tell you about Fungus. So before we get into that, Brian also asked me to give you a little kind of summary just about kind of my career in games. So these are some very hastily prepared slides about that. So I guess I started in games when I was a kid, like on the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64 and Commodore Amiga, and just got into making my own games, and eventually got to the point where I was kind of publishing them, but like on shareware and public domain. This is all before the internet, so everything was being posted out in floppy disks, very primitive, but we had a lot of fun with it, and I was able to work with my friends on kind of cool, crazy ideas. And ones we did were like about mutant potatoes and kind of armies of like warring ants and stuff, and yeah, they're good fun. So kind of grew up then, and then went to college, got a computer science degree from Trinity. Did a year of computer animation out in Ballyfermot as well, but never completed that course, but it was actually a very useful experience just to kind of learn all the animation tools and to get an understanding of that process. So then, when I graduated from Trinity, I got a job in Instinct Technology up in Donegal, and I worked there for about 6 years. And we worked on a product called Instinct Engine and Instinct Studio. So Instinct Engine was a kind of a Doom 3 level graphics, physics kind of like game engine for. It was primarily used for making first-person shooters. We kind of made some. We made a game called Dogfighter with it as well. It's like an aerial combat game. And there was a whole set of tools that went with that called Instinct Studio. And we did lots of kind of tech demos and stuff. But unfortunately, the company never really made it. So moved on then to set up a Dublin office for PlayFirst, who are a US San Francisco-based casual mobile game developer. Their biggest selling title would be Diner Dash, which the last I heard it had something like crazy, like 700 million downloads. I think was the last official figure for the game over the lifetime of the franchise. And so yeah, I kind of started there taking on lead engineering roles on some of their titles like Diner Dash, Wedding Dash, Hotel Dash. Then over time, kind of grew into this role of chief architect, where I was kind of in charge for the technology strategy for the whole company. And in the last year or two before I left, we migrated over to a Cocos 2DX kind of game pipeline, and we built up a lot of tools and kind of libraries around that as well. And that's a game called Diner Dash Rush. Okay, so then kind of after PlayFirst, about 4 months ago, I have to switch slides over here. So give me a second. Yeah, so about 4 months ago, myself and 2 other guys decided to set up a new company called Snozbot. So we're about crazy ideas and experimenting, and definitely an awful lot less commercial than say like the PlayFirst. We're trying to go back to our roots a bit and just make cool games. And we're very experimental, so we've basically taken the last few months to just try out lots of ideas, put them out there, and see what people like and what we like making as well. So the 3 people involved is myself, a guy called John O'Kane who made a game called Super Sword Shield up there, and another kind of previous colleague of ours called Roman Pierce. So John's game Super Sword Shield, I guess it's an infinite runner kind of combat game. The nearest thing to it actually is Flappy Bird, weirdly, but John's been working on this for about 6 months. But it's a cool little game. All our games at the moment are free to play on the website, so you can just go in there, it's Unity web player, and just play them. I guess from my side, I started out this company with the idea of making all these kind of little platform games and just kind of crazy fun, weird games. and sort of quickly gravitated towards this thing of like interactive fiction and making story-based games. So some of the other games there are, well, Snozbot's Text Adventure. It's like a platform game where you're actually running across words. Snozbot Air it's actually a website. So it's like a well-known kind of commercial airplane or sort of like airline website, except kind of taken to the next level. So it's kind of funny. So check it out. You get the idea. Then 404 Missing Page Detective Agency. That was a Twine game that came out of the Dublin Twine Jam. And it's basically a sort of a film noir detective story set inside a computer web server. So all the characters are actually like they're like protocols, or they're things like web servers and firewalls. So we built a story in that kind of a world. So everything's free to play there. So you just go onto the website, you can play them, get the idea. So I've been working on these kind of story-based games, and I found I like working in Unity. It's a very powerful game engine. The art tools, the whole pipeline is extremely productive. But I still like this idea of using stuff like Twine, where you can make kind of branching storylines or simple kind of text-based simulations. And there wasn't really something out there that did kind of what I wanted to do. So for the last couple of months, I've been working on a library called Fungus, and we will explain what that is. So this is kind of a mind map, which is really hard to read. So this is just to kind of explain some of the concepts that kind of go into Fungus. So I've kind of broken it out into kind of game genres, game development tools, and some kind of games that I'm using as examples. So if you look at the genres, so going back in time, things like I guess text adventures, Get Lamp, choose your own adventure books, where it's the branching storylines where you just pick your path through a book. Let me see. Then, going on to then point and click games, like Monkey Island, Day of the Tentacle, and all those classics, right up to the kind of new kind of latest types of those games. Then you've got things like interactive comics, I guess visual novels, very popular in Japan. Then I guess hidden object games as well, where you've got a scene and there's things like objects in it that you have to kind of click on, and the gameplay is to kind of find those objects. And then the whole interactive fiction kind of genre at the moment, like especially with Twine, those types of games. Some of the tools are out there. There's a tool called RenPy. It's open source for creating the visual novels. There's a couple of plugins for Unity. There's Visual Novel Toolkit, Tidy Text Adventures, and Adventure Creator. Then there's Quest is another engine there. I think it's just like a PC app standalone thing. And then Twine. So if you haven't seen Twine, that's an open source game development tool. It's great for creating these branching storylines. So you kind of visually drag together the rooms that you want to have in your story, and then you just basically type the text in. You make links out between the rooms, and then you just hit publish, and it gives you a HTML page. And then you can do more advanced stuff using kind of like macros that you can put into the text. So this is a great tool. It's really exploded over the last couple of years because it really empowers people who maybe don't have a lot of programming skills to kind of make kind of fairly high quality fun games. And there's been a lot of development around that. And last year there was an event called the Dublin Twine Jam, where 18 people got together and took Twine, and most of them aren't game developers, and made kind of a lot of cool stories. And you can look at the website for that, like dublintwinejam.com, I think. So that's a cool tool, but I wanted to have the power of Unity with that as well, and with the same kind of power and flexibility as Twine, but with the power of Unity. So then some of the games that we're looking at as kind of reference. I guess the prototypical Twine game is Howling Dogs by this developer called Porpentine. Let me see what else. Day of the Tentacle. There's a very successful game on iOS last year called Device 6, which is, it's hard to describe it, you're kind of exploring this world, but the world is made completely out of text. And you're kind of exploring through the text, trying to find puzzles, and then you have to backtrack through the text to kind of solve the puzzles. Stride and Prejudice, which I think is great. It's just it's the text of Pride and Prejudice, except it's an infinite runner, so you're kind of running along the words of Pride and Prejudice. So I've actually read like 10% of Pride and Prejudice now because of that. There's a pretty lesser known game called Cause of Death, which is sort of a cheesy CSI Miami type storyline, but it's done very well. Where it's you've kind of got these nicely rendered illustrated backgrounds and overlaid with just dialogues of text, and you kind of alternate between the characters, and like you kind of tap through the story, and then you're given these decision points. Now, like I wouldn't be into that sort of storyline, but the gameplay is actually really addictive, and you kind of get sucked into it. So I'm using that as a reference. And then like some sort of interactive comics, things like 13 Coins and some of the things that Marvel are doing. So, okay, so key features of the engine. I want to be able to quickly make crazy adventure games. That's the whole reason I'm making this thing. And I want to let other people make crazy adventure games. So I'm hoping other people are interested in doing this, and I'd like to support people that want to do it. So the engine has been kind of targeted towards small creative teams. So maybe like you're an artist or an animator, script writer, something like that. You will need to do a little bit of coding, but the coding has been like deliberately minimized and made as straightforward as possible to make it as accessible as possible. It's under an open source MIT license, so you can download it, you can modify it, you can fork it. It would be nice to give attribution back when you do that, but like you don't have to. It's a very permissive license. It does need Unity 3D. We may look at other platforms in future, but for now, it's a good platform for us to build this on. And it works with the free version, and you also don't need any third-party plugins, so you can basically start this thing for free. We've tried to make the scripting learning curve as simple as possible, but still very powerful and easy to customize and extend. So if you do have some programming skills in Unity, you should be able to take this engine and make it do what you want to do. And what I'd love to see happen out of this is that we could build up a community of storytellers and just get loads of cool games out there that are kind of promoting each other and just kind of build up an environment, you know. I think there's also not just games. I think there's probably applications in educational titles, serious games, or even just for prototyping some gameplay in a game you might be making. Like maybe you're making an adventure game and you want to be able to quickly kind of flesh out storylines and see if people like them or not. Or even just as a cutscene editor. Okay, cool. So I'm not talking. I'll show some demos. All right. So we've got a couple of games in development at the moment. So Brian's kind of strong-armed me into giving this talk too early. These games are very much in production. So like there's a lot of placeholder art in here, and both of them are probably I'd say 2 months away from actually being released, even though they're going to be very short, 10 to 15 minutes of gameplay. So you need to use your imagination a little bit, but you should get an idea of the features that are in this engine. Okay, so the first one's called 404 Missing Page Detective Agency. Okay, I'm just going to click through the text. It might be too fast for you to read, but you can just kind of see what the scene is doing as we're going around. So, okay, so the spotlights here moving, that's a Unity animation, and that's been triggered from a Fungus script. So Fungus is managing the rendering of this text dialogue and providing the options here for you to click on, and then the camera transitions around the scene. And I'll just click through like some of the gameplay so you get an idea. Okay, do we shoot first or do we? So you're too drunk to actually load it. This is placeholder art. She's supposed to be a cool robot. She will be. But she's actually a HTTP request. So the characters all the characters are protocols, and yeah, it's kind of weird. So this actually started out, there was basically an image and a big huge block of text on every page. And what I found is that it's kind of off-putting having so much text to read in one go. So we found if you can actually split it up into these smaller text boxes and kind of move the camera around, it makes it a lot kind of more accessible, I think, to read through the same story. Okay, so there's about, I think, 9 or 10 scenes that we have in the game, and so far the story is, the gameplay is very linear, so we're kind of making a linear game through first, and then we're kind of adding these branches off it to kind of make it a bit more interactive and add a bit more interest. Just click through a little bit more. Okay, so now we're in the browser cache. Okay, cool. So, you get the idea there, I think. I'll just show you another game there. Okay, before I start this one, this is called Space Farm 1995. It's basically the farm I grew up on as a kid, transplanted to the moon and run by Snozbot. And he's a turkey farmer, except they're called spurkies because they're space turkeys. And it's 3 days before Christmas, and he has to be careful because poachers might come and steal the turkeys. My dad used to sleep in a shed on the farm in the days before Christmas with a shotgun in case anybody would come over to steal the turkeys. So it's kind of based on that story. And yeah, and there's a giant space octopus comes to steal the turkeys, absolutely. But, so we're trying to do something kind of cinematic with this as well. So it's all very placeholder, but get the idea.
Tucked inside a cozy compact crater, all is quiet in the derelict space farm. Poor Father Snozbot is exhausted. He's been plucking smokies all day long, getting them ready for the Christmas market tomorrow. He's tired, but he has to be on guard in case the poachers try to steal his precious smokies. Snozbot lays his head on a bag of spurgeon just for a minute, and is soon snoring loudly. He dreams of advanced digital watches and shiny microwave ovens that he will buy in the spring sales. Little does Snozbot know, disaster is about to strike.
Okay, so now you're into the story. Okay, so we've only got the first few rooms just connected up, but the story is actually mostly written. So with this one we want to have the Jamor kind of clicking on objects to kind of navigate around the rooms and to navigate around the scenes. So I'm just going to show the first scene here because too much on set. But okay, so here's you click on this. This is a priority boarding stick. So we're trying to do kind of overlap between the other stories that we have. So in the Snozbot Air game, one of the things is you can buy a priority boarding stick for getting onto the flight quicker, you know. Integrated nail technology. Okay, and we're calling this the Ren and Stimpy room. So whenever you pick up an object, you get this like crazy, kind of super detailed close-up of the object that you just picked up. Ren and Stimpy was an old cartoon. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's worth checking out on YouTube. It's pretty crazy. Okay, so I just picked up priority boarding stick. I can pick up the time travel pills as well. So this is rather than having checkpoints, we wanted to have something different. So if you die, you can take it, or just before you die, you take a time travel pill, and you'll go back like to the previous scene. And then you can find out about the room. So each room will have a kind of an information icon as well that you can get a description. So as well, if you want to kind of go through a room, you've got the option of getting the description of it rather than having to sit through a big long, maybe multi-page description. Okay, cool. And then we can head outside. And that's what outside looks like at the moment. So we have all the text kind of written for the game, but the art is very placeholder. Okay, cool. Back to the slides. Okay. So when you make a game with Fungus, there's 4 main types of objects you're dealing with. The first is the room, which that's the maybe I'll just show you this in Unity actually quick. give me a sec here. I'll use the 404. Right, so the 4 types of objects. So every Fungus game has a game object. There's always just one, and it kind of manages like moving between rooms. Rooms are these things here. So the kind of the 4 big things here. They're basically your locations in the game. Then within a room, you can have. You can have what we call views. So that green box up there is kind of the starting view for the game. Zoom in, you should see that. Yeah, and that kind of bright green rectangle shows you what you're going to see on on an iPad with a 4:3 aspect ratio. And it's hard to see it there, but there's a dark green rectangle, and that shows you what it's going to look like on, say, like a Microsoft Surface with a 2:1 aspect ratio. So it's a way of quickly previewing what your game is going to look like on different devices. But it's basically primarily defined as a camera angle, and you have multiple ones of these set up inside your room, and then from the script you can just transition between the different ones with a pan or a fade, whatever you need. So then the other thing we have inside these views, we have pages. So that white box is where the text is going to appear. And we've customized the Unity editor so that there's, it's very easy to drag these things around and position them where you want. If you want to resize the view, you can just do it like this. So now if we get play, text appears up there now. So very quick iteration for laying out the scene. Yeah. So then just to describe things again. So the main thing with the room, so room is basically a base class that you can inherit from, and it provides the main scripting interface to the game. So when you want to make a new room, you always make a room script and inherit from the room class. And then from there you've got really simple access to all the features of Fungus, so it's really straightforward. Game, you don't really interact with game directly yourself, but it manages basically movement between rooms and doing smooth transitions when you want to move to a different room. It also manages the game state, so things like what objects are you holding, any global flags that might have been set, or things that you need to count, like the number of times you've gone into a room or the number of times you've hit somebody or something like that. Page then is that text dialogue. It primarily controls rendering the background for the text box, fitting the text into the right positions, setting the title text if you need it, and then kind of slowly writing out the story text over time, and then presenting the list of options. And it uses the IM GUI system in Unity, which is it's fairly basic text rendering support. Unity are actually working on a new GUI kind of solution, like a built-in one. So whenever that comes out, we'll be rewriting page to take advantage of that. We could have used something like NGUI or maybe 2D Toolkit or something like one of these third-party GUI rendering solutions. But we don't want to have any dependencies on third-party plugins like that. We want it to just work out of the box. But there's nothing stopping you taking page, looking at the code and rewriting it to work with any text rendering solution you want. And we might provide an NGUI solution as well with time. So then view, we said that kind of specifies a single camera shot, and one really handy thing with it is it allows you to preview the multiple aspect ratios that you have on all the different types of devices that are out there. And that's actually one of the key problems that happens when you sit down to make a mobile game, is how do I make this thing look okay on iOS and Android and everything that's out there. And just showing those boxes gives you almost a solution to that, and being able to zoom the camera in and out. And an awful lot of time is spent in QA actually just trying the game on lots of different types of devices and finding those sort of bugs where on Android, on a specific device, there's a black kind of square on one side of the screen. So hopefully it'll save a lot of those problems. Then there's other components that you can use or attach to objects in the scene to do things. So camera controller, that allows us to do kind of one-line transitions between views and between rooms. So we can just switch instantaneously, we can crossfade between things, or we can kind of smoothly pan between two camera views. And again, that's very easy to extend, so you can write in more types of transitions if you need them. Sprite controller. So Unity with the new Unity 2D support in 4.3, provides lots of great functionality around sprites, but it's missing some really simple stuff like fading sprites in and out, or little movement controllers. And the animation system, it's really powerful, but we want to provide a single kind of one-line way to play an animation. So that's what Sprite Controller does. Fixed height sprite. This solves another, well, partially solves another problem you have in mobile game development, which is having the row at the start of the project about what resolution you should develop your art assets in. So what we said was, it doesn't matter. You can use whatever resolution you want. Like, so for pixel art, it can be quite small resolution, or for if you want to make something insanely detailed, you can go and do like iPad Retina backgrounds with huge amounts of detail in them. That's fine. The problem if you do that though in the editor is the sprites. You could have a big different rooms might have different size background sprites. So you could have like one huge room over here and then lots of tiny little rooms over here. So what fixed sprite does. That doesn't actually happen. I'll show you what it does. If I drag on fixed height sprite, I can basically just type in whatever size I want the sprite to be. And if you do that for all of your rooms, then they all end up the same size. But it also scales all the kind of child objects as well, so all your views can scale the right size. So then your scene in Unity ends up looking like a bunch of post-it notes, which is really easy to navigate around. Okay, then button. So if you want to be able to click on sprites and then have some action happen after that, you just put on the button component, and that you basically tell it the name of a method in your script that you can call whenever that sprite is clicked, and then you can do whatever you like. Strings parser. So we have a way of defining strings out in a text file, then parsing them in, and then embedding them inside your code. So you don't necessarily have to push the actual text of your story in the actual game code. You can separate it out, which can be useful in some situations. And then command queue. When you're using Fungus, like scripting language, you're using command queue all the time, but we've actually hidden it. But what it allows us to do is make sequences of actions. So we can say we want to pan to a certain view, wait for 2 seconds, and then write some text on a page, or any combination that we want. All right. And then we have lots and lots of commands. Well, actually not too many, maybe 20. I'll run through the things we can do. So wait, we'll just stop the story for whatever number of seconds. Call is kind of the top of the list, but it's one of the more complicated ones. It allows us to basically call any method we want in the Unity script to do kind of arbitrary actions, but have them happen as part of the sequence. So we can go pan to view, wait till that finishes, and then call a certain function in the Unity script. And I'll show you examples of this in a few minutes. We can set the view, so we can kind of move the camera from one view to another view instantaneously. We can change which page is being rendered to. So if you have a room set up with multiple pages in it, and say you want to do dialogue, and there's one text box down here and another text box up here, use set page to kind of switch whichever one is active. Title then sets the text box title, and it's optional. You leave it blank, nothing will appear. Say will write out that, like a line of text over time. So then to do options, it's a two-step process. So we use add option to just add each individual option with an action. So an action is basically the name of a method to call when that option is clicked on. And then you call choose, and that will actually display all the options with a block of text at the top. Then you can move between rooms, you can move to room. Set flag, set counter, set inventory, that's the global game state. So that's how you kind of control when things happen in your game and you want to record it. You can set it like a Boolean flag to say that like a door has been opened, or you can say set inventory, you can say I picked up the priority boarding stick now, and you can check that state later on. Then again, simple things for controlling sprites, so we can hide and show sprites with one line. We can fade them in and out. There's one there as well for fading and sliding the sprite at the same time. And we can add more things like in future to do different effects. And play animation. So if you want to do something complicated with sprites, or have even like the animation on the camera there for the Space Farm game, they're just all Unity animations. So play animation is a way of just like playing an arbitrary animation when you want to. And then pan to view and fade to view, or how we kind of move between the different views in a room. And So I might demo some of that code stuff then, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. It's quite abstract. So this is, when you download the Fungus project from GitHub, this is the example scene that you get. Right now there's only 3 rooms in it, so we'll be extending this over time. I'll just run it first to give you an idea. Okay, so you get a single page with just a menu on it. Let's look at the, we'll do the views I guess first. Okay, so we can go look at the logo, or we can take a look at that toadstool. If we look at the logo, over we go. We wait for a couple of seconds, and we'll come back. Or we can kind of fade over to the toadstool. There we go. And we go look at the logo again. And then an example here, just telling a really simple story in this scene. A mushroom grew in the forest. What am I doing here? Again, showing a weight. Dramatic pause. Okay, so now we can decide, do we want to go to sleep or do we want to produce some spores? So, if we try to go to sleep, so he goes, I'm not feeling tired. Refresh mushroom. So we can now spawn some spores. Okay, lots of spores, great. So now we can kind of say, okay, I want to go to sleep now. So tired, I sleep now. And now he's sleepy. So that was actually a flag being set when he decided to do the sporing. He set a flag, and now it's the same code being run, but this time we're checking the flag to see if he's tired or not. Okay. Now we're back out again. So we'll just run through some of that code to show you how it works. Okay, just a matter of interest, who's actually used Unity or is familiar with it much? Okay, what about C#?
Yeah.
Everybody? Yeah, alright. So this is all C# code. In Unity you can do C# or Unity script, which is basically a derivative of script. I think these days most people use C#. The whole engine is written in C#. And okay, so when you're scripting with Fungus, all you ever do really is create a class and derive it from room, and then attach that to your room object. All the other objects within that room are controlled from this script. So you don't really need to know about any of the other classes in the engine at all, apart from this one. So that makes it pretty straightforward. And then all the commands are simple, almost C-style functions where it's just, there's no object, you're just calling a method on the room. So it's all very flat and easy to follow. And then, okay, so first things first. So this writing room, you put references to any objects that you want to control at the top in properties, and you just make them public. And this is like a standard way of like developing things with Unity. So the writing room is the room that tells us like that writes out the story. The only object that actually needs to know about is the main menu, because we need to be able to transition back to the main menu. So the only object we have there is the menu room, and you add public room, menu room at the top of the script.
Is each room a like a bitmap with text on it? Or is a room a game?
So a room is just a game object in Unity.
So is that 3 rooms?
That's 3 rooms. Yeah.
So you create a room essentially for every screen, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. So that's the kind of highest level organizational thing in Fungus, is a room. You could do an entire game inside a single room, but to make things more manageable, it makes more sense to split them out. So let's look at the menu room.
So does that mean that every room has to know of the rooms that are connected to it?
Exactly.
And so it goes in hierarchical structure.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but you can have, it's not like, doesn't have to be acyclical or anything. You can have two rooms that link to each other,
Yeah.
or you can teleport between rooms. You know, it's,
So they don't. Well, they will be connected, but
They will
don't
be connected.
necessarily have to seem connected. At least, but
yeah, it's whatever makes sense for your game. You can just arbitrarily link things together. No problem. So if we look at, say, the writing room, it has a script on the right hand side here, writing room, and like literally you basically write your script over here, select the object that you want to put it on, drag it on top, and now that becomes our room.
Sorry, do that again, will you?
Yeah. If you want, we could do a whole scene from scratch at some point,
Yeah.
but I might just run through this example first to give you an idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the writing room. At the moment, it's just a sprite. It has a transform, a sprite renderer, and that fixed height sprite thing I talked about, which makes everything the same size.
They're Unity things. The sprite render is a Unity thing, is it?
Yeah. Like every object has a transform.
Yeah.
Like when you create an empty object, it has a transform. You can't get rid of it. Sprite renderer is the new Unity 2D stuff for making a sprite. And then fixed height sprite, that's from Fungus. That's to make everything the unified size. Yeah, so if I drag on writing room here, that object now becomes a room. And
Because you've created a C# class that extends your room class.
Yeah.
And you just drag. That obviously extends game component at some stage, is it?
yeah, further up the hierarchy.
So you can drag
game
that and
logic.
make it. It's a game component that you can attach to a game object.
Yeah. So this is just completely standard Unity development. So you can see there's like a public property there called called menu room, and it's set to none at the moment, but we just added the script. So to connect that to the menu, you take the menu room object, drag it across, and drop it in there. And if you see a green line appeared, so we have a link back now. So the other thing we have to fix now, because we got rid of that room script, was the menu needs to have a similar link back to the writing room so we can connect the two together. So you can see it has a property called writing room, and it's missing. So we'll fix that. Just drag that in there. Now the arrow goes both directions.
So that's basically for the transition between the two screens or two pictures.
Yeah,
Make sure that one knows of the other knows to go where to go from where.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So anytime you need to change something on an object inside Fungus, you need to have a reference to the object. But there's only 3 types of objects there really, just like rooms, pages, and views. And they all work exactly the same way, so once you figure one of them out, you figure the other one out. Okay. So if we go look at the writing room script, there's 2 methods that every room has, called onEnter and onLeave. OnLeave, I haven't written one yet. Like it's basically, so onEnter is when the player goes into the room, and onLeave is when he goes to a different room. You're always right onEnter. There may be a case where you want to write onLeave. I haven't had one yet. So when you enter the room, you basically what you're doing is you're sequencing the commands to be executed for that room, and what that looks like is just these kind of one-liners which tell the game what to do. So we're going to set the title for the current page. We're going to say something, then we're going to say something else, and then say something else again. When you do say, it writes out the text slowly, then it shows a continue button, and then it'll move on to the next command in the list, whatever that is.
So the continue button is automatically added in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the say command does that for you.
Okay. So when you want to have each say command is their own text box effectively, with their own continue button.
Yeah. Well, the page is the text box, and then the say is the bit of text that's written in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because you can have a title on top of that as well, and over time we may make it that there's other things you could do while you're saying. We might have we'll probably add in icon support on the side as well, so that you can say show icon left or right and give it like a texture as well.
you have support for changing the format of the text box. So
Yes.
you want it on black background as well.
Yes. Yeah. I'll show you that quickly actually. So Unity has this idea of prefabs. So instead of, if you've got hundreds of pages in the game, instead of going through one by one, you can make a prefab, and then you just make instances of that prefab. By changing that one prefab, you change all of the ones in the game. So this is the prefab for page. and it has 4 properties on it for controlling the style. So, for example, say if we want to change it to use green text. Okay, I'm not hitting save or anything, just hitting play. Now it's unreadable. So, and actually, you can change that while you're playing the game as well. So if we need to, I think you can. Wait a second. No, that's right. I have to restart for that.
You have to pause it, I think, and change it.
No, I think for that one you'd have to restart because it basically takes a prefab then instantiates it. So you have to, it would work if you changed it on the instance, but not on the prefab while you're playing the game. But that's you can change the style that way. You can drag in different fonts. You can just use TTF, OTF fonts, whatever you want. The background, that text box is it's a tiny little texture. This box style controls that.
So you can change the texture as well. So
Yeah, this one here.
do you then have options of changing the format of the text within the text? So, say you want somebody's screen or something on the center of the
Yeah. So I mean, like change it like bold or like make the text bigger or
move the text right into the center.
the centering. You could do it by modifying page and adding in like some flags for doing that basically. You can do whatever you can do with the IM GUI system in Unity. Right now, it's pretty simple. Support we have. If there's feature requests, though, very happy to add things in. Or you know, if you go and change it yourself, and you want to do a pull request to get it back into the engine, great. Right now, we've kind of focused on the common use cases, you know. So that's the box background is that tiny little sprite up there. It's called a 9 slice. So like, you basically take the sprite, divide it into 9 pieces, and then the corners kind of stay the same when it's dragged out, but it resizes the bits along the middles. You know?
Yeah, you also have the center, which is the white in it.
And that's the white in the middle.
And
Yeah.
so it just assembles it from what it knows. And
Yeah.
how big it needs to be.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So basically, you can make it any size down, and it won't get blurry around the edges.
Can you also change animated effect of the text, for example, says that the different types of it will start fading in and out of the back, so get written and deleted and it move along.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an open source library, so the source code for doing everything is here. If you look in the page class, let's see, so I mean, this is all the code for rendering that text box. And the write story command is what functions right, is what actually writes that story out over time. So you can just come in there and play around with it and get it to do exactly what you want. There's a fairly simple interface to it. I mean, you can say things, you can add options, and you can set the title. You know, so within that you can do whatever you want. And if you want to extend it with more things that it can do, like icons or whatever, just go ahead. You know? But like I said, any feature requests for any games that you guys are trying to make, whatever, get in touch. You know, I might add it in as a feature for our games as well. Okay, that was a few tangents. I don't remember where I was. Oh yeah, I was trying to show you, yeah, just some example text, or example script. So we've set the title, we've said 3 things in a row, we waited for 3 seconds, I've set the title back to be empty, so that just, like, if the string is empty, the title just isn't shown, that space isn't used. Say 2 more things, add an option to the option list, and then the last thing is to choose, and that'll actually display the options and the text in there. So it basically shows like a kind of a text prompt followed by whatever options were previously added. And then
So you basically work first at the option, but then
decide to choose.
choose one of that. Those text that I've given you now.
Yeah,
Okay.
which sounds backwards, but like I've tried a lot of different ways. And what that allows you to do, this is kind of why you need to do it. So say you have a variable called, I don't know, pick it up. Go on, right? and that's true or false. It allows you to do this so that you can actually check conditions before you add the options.
Okay.
Right, and then you choose.
Make sure that, for example, in the start line, go pick up an item before you go back to another room in order to get the option that you need in order to continue the
Exactly.
start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So and as well, like if you're in a room and there's the option to pick up a thing, well, if you've already picked it up, then you shouldn't see that option again.
Yeah.
So that's what that if statement will allow you to do. Okay. So then the way options work, there's basically the text for the option, and they're kind of shown as links here, but you can actually make those buttons very easily as well with that IM GUI. You can just change the style and like it'll draw a little box outline and everything. So we've just done them as links, so I'll probably change back to actually using buttons. So yeah, when you add an option, you get the little bit of text that displays on that button or link or whatever you want to call it. And then when the user actually clicks on the option, you can specify a method to be invoked when they do that. So we've got this go to sleep function, which is this guy down here. So in C#, that's called a delegate. And it's a specific type of delegate called an action, which is a built-in delegate type that doesn't take any parameters and doesn't have a return type. So it's very, very simple. You just make action and like the variable, and then you can point that to any method that, you know, there's like a void that doesn't take any parameters, like a void go to sleep. Yeah, so this is how you kind of jump around different, like the control logic of your scene. So the user's decided to go to sleep, so we come in here, and this is one of those if statements we were talking about. So we're checking to see if this flag has been set where we've spawned spores. So if you remember the story, you spawned some spores and you went back, and then you were able to sleep this time because you spawned some spores. So we've set that flag kind of further down in the code. So if the flag has been set, then we say two things, and then we're going to move back to the menu room because we're finished with the story. So you can really just build together like just combinations of whatever you want from the kind of the menu of commands that are available. And then that's the alternative path, which is I'm not tired because I haven't spawned any spores yet, or whatever. And this is that function I was talking about called call that you can use just to execute like an arbitrary method as part of the sequence. So what will happen here is we're going to say I'm not feeling tired, and we're going to hit continue. Then we'll say maybe I should spawn some spores. You hit continue, and then we're going to call this produce spores function. So the reason you need to use the call method instead of just actually invoking that is so that it'll happen in the right sequence. So after you say something, then you want that function to be called. And then when we do produce the spores, it's just more.
Is that because the say thing, the text is going to come character by character, and it's sort of threaded or something, is it? To do that?
That uses a coroutine.
Okay.
Yeah, to write out that. So I've kind of steered away from disabling objects, and so that's allowed me to use coroutines on a few things. If it's an issue for games in general, like we can replace it with like just don't use coroutines, just use an update loop or whatever, you know. Kind of the simplest approach was to use coroutines. That kind of went with
These
that.
guys won't know what coroutines are. I'm just kind of learning them myself.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. But all that should be just kind of abstracted and hidden away from you anyway. Okay. And then again, more add option and more choose. So really, there's a few kind of core things you need to learn, and you just do them over and over and over again. You build your story. That's kind of how it works. Okay, then just look at that scene actually in Unity, how it's constructed. This is pretty much the simplest thing you can have, which is just a room with a page in it. Also, there's lots of different combinations that you can do of, you know, a room with just one page, a room with multiple pages, a room with a view that has a page, or a page that's a child of a view. There's lots of different ways you can do it. What we try to do is make it that no matter what you do, it'll try and guess what you're trying to make it do. So it generally shouldn't break, but like if you try to do something complicated, it might do something that you weren't expecting. But then there'll be a way of fixing that. If you know what I mean. We might see that more as I get into an example.
Is it possible to put like a room within a room like you did with the 404 where you had the entrance scene before? Would it be possible to do that for windows and scenes like that and have it move in the background? So you have the view at the back is being pulled on one window while the main actual room is like planes. So say if you had the room 4 again,
Yeah.
you'd have the window in the back with one scene that just being dragged along. So you have like clouds floating past.
Yeah.
And it resets. And it's just the view being clear.
Yeah,
That'd
absolutely.
be
Yeah.
like one of the features that would be possible with the Unity engine.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. To do something like that, I mean, it doesn't need to be a room or well, it doesn't need to be a room to do that layering effect. That's just another sprite. So, like in that 404 scene, what you're seeing is actually just a sprite layered over the kind of the room sprite.
Okay.
So you can layer those up whatever way you want in Unity, and you can put whatever controllers you want to like do scrolling effects, that kind of thing. But the last slide is actually future plans for the engine. So I do want to have simple supporting for parallax scrolling, so that you can do multiple layers against the mountains.
So
And
it runs faster than so it goes to the background and all that.
exactly, yeah, yeah. That parallax scrolling is really when the camera is moving. So if the camera isn't moving, and all you want to do is just have like an animated background.
Yeah.
You saw the character there with the girl. Actually, no, the spotlights is better. You know, at the start when the spotlights are moving like this. You could do something like that very easily. Just instead of moving like that, it's just clouds moving like that. You know. The animation tools in Unity are fantastic. Like they're really, really good. Setting that stuff up. As well, I mean, it's still early days with this stuff, but what I'd love to do is like just do some YouTube videos or whatever, just doing a walkthrough. How do I do like moving clouds inside Fungus? Even though it's a Unity feature, like if people want to know how to do that, I can show you how to do it. You know. But I really want people using this library to tell me what they want to see or what they're having trouble with, or what problems they're trying to solve. And then if no people are asking for something, I'll put a video up to show how to do that thing. You know. So, I want it to be kind of a community, not just me telling people.
Where do people get it?
It's on GitHub. Go back to the slides. Okay, so imagine there's a colon and 2 slashes after that HTTP. It's not. We've got the company page on GitHub, and then just there's only one project in there called Fungus. We're also setting up fungus.snozbot.com, so it's a kind of a hub on our website for finding out about Fungus and links to YouTube videos and things like that. Any other questions? Okay, yeah, so I just want to show you the layout of that room. So the writing room, you've seen this sort of example before. It's a sprite with a fixed height sprite controller on it with a unified height, and then the writing room script, which inherits from room. It contains one object, which is the page, and again we can just drag that around to position it wherever we want. Now we haven't done any camera control on this scene, so we can literally just drag the page in and it works. So what the engine does in that case is it takes whatever the room sprite is and then just makes that fill the screen, right? And centers on it, but it doesn't give you any control over how you can move around kind of the view of that sprite. So if you want to actually control the camera, you need to drag the view in. So if we look at the view room instead, you can see we've added in 3 different views. So can you see those rectangles? That's kind of a view around the logo. This is the view when you actually come into the room, and it shows everything. And then the toadstool view is that kind of zoom in on the right hand side. So those are the 3 objects, and the view script. I mean, it's literally one line. It's the position and just a size for the camera, and that's all it is. So when we go into the view room script, which actually controls that, similar to the last time, we have the link back to the menu room, which is like a public room, and then we have 3 more, which are the views. So the main view, the logo view, and the toadstool view. Again, on enter. So the first thing when we enter the room is, because we have 3 views, we don't know which one we want to use. Like the engine can't know for you, so you have to tell it. The only exception to that is if there's only 1 view in a room, then the engine will assume that that's the view you want to actually go and look at, and it will just automatically use it. But if you have more than 1, then the first thing you'll need to do is tell it which view you want to use. It'll guess, but odds on it's going to guess the wrong one, so call set view. And if you forget to connect those up inside Unity as well, you'll get an error message in the console saying it's probably a null reference. I can't remember if we had an error message for it or not, but That's a common thing, is that you actually add it in the script but forget to actually connect it up in the editor. Watch out for that. Yeah, and then we have these three options which allow you to kind of move to the different views. We call it choose, so it actually shows those options. And then each of those options is pretty straightforward. So the easiest one is move to room. Brings you back out to the main menu. We can look at the logo, and the sequence there is, we're going to pan over to the view, and you give it the logo view object and how long you want the pan to take, so 2 seconds. We automatically do a smooth pan as well, so it kind of smooth, like it eases in, picks up speed, and then gets most of the way over there, and then slows down again. Then we wait for a few seconds, then we pan back to the main view. So if you remember, it kind of goes over to the object, waits for a second, and comes back. And then we're going to call on enter. So what that will do is that will bring us back to this this kind of scenario here, where it's the menu for that screen, or the options for that screen. And then look toadstool, very similar, except we're using fade to view now instead of pan to view, so it'll actually crossfade over to the, it's not a crossfade, it's the face of black, and then it fades back in again on the new view. One of the plan features is actually to do dissolves as well, so that like you can take it from one view and then dissolve to a different view. To do that, we need to add in a temporary second camera. We need to be rendering both views at the same time, but that's a plan feature. And yeah, and then this calls onto the look logo method when it's finished. So it went, I think it went fade to black, fade in on the toadstool, then it moves over to the logo. So you can reuse some of your code by using the call method. So you can kind of set kind of sequences up and then just call them when you want to kind of reuse that code multiple times inside a room. And that's that. What else to mention? I suppose just to explain what these functions are actually doing. If you look at the room script, you kind of see. I guess as a coder, the first time you see this, you might think that like set view is it's like a synchronous function, that it happens immediately. But it's not like that. What it actually is, it's the command pattern. So we're setting up sequences of commands and then executing them. So set view is actually creating an object, like a command object called a set view command. That's adding it onto a queue, but it doesn't execute that set view immediately. That'll happen later on. And we basically run through the whole method, adding on these command objects to a queue. And then once the function exits, we automatically call execute on that queue, and then those commands are done in sequence. So it's you sort of don't have to worry about it up to a point, right? But it probably helps to understand that when you get into it, and maybe you might be thinking something's happening immediately because you wrote the code to do that, but it actually happens when that function exits. That's when the commands are done. And if you think about it, that's kind of how it has to work, because things happen in sequence.
So basically, if you have an idea of queue that you're going to create rather than code,
Yeah.
you're going to write, rather know how which order to be executed.
Yeah.
So if you know that, you do what and how.
Exactly, yeah. So if you think in sequences of things, so what you're doing is you're building a sequence.
So what would you do if you wanted to have an idle string, as in you're waiting for the player to do something that isn't a text box?
Can you give me an example of it, like?
I guess the idea would just be standing still, and allocating for depending.
Yeah.
And it's just waiting for you to click on something like add in.
I'll just wait for tap kind of a thing.
Just wait for
An action.
Yeah.
Wait for input. Wait for you.
Oh right, yeah,
Your
yeah.
priority point task.
Yeah, so we actually have that, yeah. In the space farm, when you click through the text, continue, the text box disappears, and there's 3 objects there.
Yeah.
And there's nothing happening, and it's waiting for you to do some input.
Yeah.
You don't do anything. It just exits out, and it's up to you to have like buttons in the scene that will start the script off again. So what you do is, yeah, actually that's a good question. I'll show you how a button works. There's no example in the example app yet for a button. So I'll show you. This is an example here. I'll show you a little shortcut as well, it's quite handy. So you don't have to play through your whole game to get to the room that you're working on. So the way to kind of shortcut things is to use this active room property on the game component. So it starts off in the office currently. What you can do instead is drag over the cash town room to there. So now when you hit play, you're immediately already in cash town. I'll click through this just to show you what I'm demonstrating. You can also control that write speed as well. In the page prefab, there's a property like actually, no, it's not a game. Yeah, this cartridge per second, so we can change that from 60 to 6,000. That didn't work.
That was when it's still playing.
Okay, something wrong with it.
Probably too fast.
Yeah.
Can't handle that.
Should work. Okay, it's probably a bug. Yeah. Okay, so there's a bit of the story here where we hear an odd metallic tug. So now we're fading in this object. Placeholder art again, it's an access token that we want to pick up. But there's no text box being displayed now, so we've literally just, the method just exits, so we don't have to do options or anything, it comes out and there's nothing else to render now. So the page has nothing to do, so you won't see it on the screen. All there is a sprite that has a button component on it that we can click. So if we look at that sprite, yeah, it's this one here. So it has a button script. So there's two things on it. The first is called method name. So we have collect access token, and then there's not a disable checkbox. So if that's on or off, if it's on, the object will disappear whenever it's clicked on, right, automatically. And if it's left on, then the object will just stay there, so you can click on it multiple times. So like for an info button, like you wouldn't want it to disappear, and when you click on it, you want to see every time the information. But for something like this, we want to be able to pick it up, so we're going to click it. So what's going to happen is it's going to call a method called collect access token.
Question. When you would know, say you would go away from there, from the room, it would come back with the option reappear. Like would that object reappear?
No.
Needing to, or
Well, it'll, unless you do something to preserve or reset the state, like if the state stays, whatever changes you make to the state will stay. Right, so if you go to a different room and come back, it'll be the way you left it. So if you need it to go back to the initial state, then you should have like a reset like function or something like that you call that will set up your sprites and things.
On leave, you're saying you didn't use on leave too much. You have an on enter.
You could do it in on leave, yeah.
So when you on leave, reset the room.
Yeah, you could do that, yeah, that makes sense.
So the safe way of the room is preserved through transition.
Yes,
Unless
unless
you
you do something to change it. So we try not to change things on you if you can.
so basically his off is still the same state as we left it and when we stopped again.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so if you move back to room, it'll still be whatever way you left it when you moved out of that room.
Oh, okay.
Right. There's a thing called is first visit on room, so you can actually see if it's the first time you've gone into a room just with a single function call. So that maybe the first time you go in, you want to show the text boxes automatically. Second time in, you want to make that more of an option for the user to click on a button to bring it up instead. Okay, so the button then, it's going to call this method called collect access token. I'm going to click on it. There we go. Yeah. So something happened. So the object has disappeared because auto disable was checked, and we call that collect access token, and that's after displaying this text. So we'll go look at it.
do you have transition effects for auto disable as well?
No, not at the moment. But we could add in something new. We could just make auto disable always be a fade, and you can set the duration maybe. So if you set it to 0, it's like instantaneous.
New feature idea like that.
Yeah, feature request.
So you got a question there at the front, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, are you able to drag sprites around the actual room when you're in game? say that like hard on it is you have like a bit of rubbish over it, and then you have to drag the rubbish sprite out of the way to actually find it.
Oh, as a gameplay thing?
Is there any kind of like action like operation in Unity or the Fungus to actually do that, or is it just very static?
You can anything you can do in Unity. You can.
So yeah,
We tried to avoid blocking you from doing anything that you could do with Unity anyway. So to do that particular example, you could add a like a box collider to the object, and you can put some sort of mouse controller on it so that when the user clicks on it, that object is now attached to the mouse. And then like have its transform attached to the mouse, so you could actually drag it around the screen then if you wanted to. That you can do that in Unity without using Fungus at all. You know? And there's nothing we're doing that would block you from doing that in Unity. If it's a really common thing for people to want to be able to do that, then we can make that part of the core engine.
It just makes some of those things that makes more sense in like looking at a game, because like just in this example, it just like falls over and then there's this giant hard drive out of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah.
You're more like kind of interested if there's like a look for this, like what was that noise?
Yeah.
It's just something like that.
Like a sound effect with it.
Yeah.
In one of the other stories, in the Space Farm story, there's a bit where I think like the story describes sort of like a bush moving apart, and then there's like a diving helmet behind it. So like the plan there is that we just do a little animation and just have that animation triggered when the story hits that part and the bushes just kind of move apart. And then you can see the helmet that's hidden behind it. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can do whatever you want really, but. And you can just use Fungus just to trigger those things. You know? So we don't have to have a command for everything. We can just have like that call method basically allows us to trigger things whenever we want them. So Fungus can control the sequencing of things, but you can go and write the Unity code to actually do whatever you want. You can use 3D objects in here. You could use a perspective camera. There's nothing that says this has to be a 2D scene. It's not a 2D scene. It's 3D. We're happen to be making 2D games with it. Any other questions? Okay, I just want to show the script then for that button. Yeah, so that's that's a collect access token that gets invoked when you click on the sprite. And literally, oh, that actually answers your question. See that fade sprite? So that's actually fading the sprite out over time. We could make it move off the screen as well if we wanted to, whatever we want to do here. You can play an animation on it when you click on it as well. Or just swap two sprites, you could fade that sprite out and fade another sprite in, or just alternate between them, or
You also, when you click something, when you click this left sprite, it'll fade to a different view folder instead of one time. And you have to do something at that time and then click back.
oh, like a client action.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right now you can't, but I put that in, like maybe and show a little like a clock or something elapsed, so you've only got like 5 seconds.
Almost like a
Yeah.
mini game in the game itself.
Yeah, yeah.
What I kind of
What do you call it? Like quick time actions? Is that what you
Yeah,
call it?
like
You know, you have to.
time events,
Yeah.
mini game,
Yeah,
challenge.
yeah. So I think that will be a core feature. We just haven't got around to writing it yet.
Okay.
I'm going to run out of space on this. Do you want to kind of wrap it up and we'll...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just how long have we got?
You're done. 5 minutes. These guys need a break anyway, and we're going to do something else.
All right.
You're at 1 hour and 5 minutes.
All right. Cool. Yeah. So stuff we're planning to do in future then. It's just a kind of shopping list. So we want to be able to. At the moment, it's kind of set up for landscape mode mobile apps in the view. So it shows you what it looks like on an iPad with a 4:3 aspect ratio, which is your kind of the narrowest case, and then it also shows you what you're getting on say a Surface tablet with a 2:1 aspect ratio. But we should be able to kind of preview any aspect ratio you want to, like whatever devices you're targeting. Parallax scrolling you mentioned. Want to be able to do those dissolve transitions by using multiple cameras to like smoothly fade between two scenes at the same time, or to do a wipe kind of effect, where the camera kind of moves across. When Unity GUI comes out, we want to have full support for that. And I'd love to have things like, you know, checkboxes and drop down lists and all that kind of thing built right into the game, not just kind of options that you can click on. Unity, so if you've seen the asset store for Unity, there's just thousands of plugins that you can get. One very popular one is a thing called Playmaker, which is a visual script editor where you can kind of visually drag and drop together your conditions and basically those commands that I put, you'll be able to do it in kind of a visual interface. It's exactly the same thing as writing the thing in script, but it's kind of, I guess, for non-programmers, it's maybe a preferred way of working, you know. The example game, I've already started that over the weekend, which is what you just saw. And I'll be fleshing that out with examples for every feature in Fungus, so that if you want to find out how to do something, just look in the example game and you'll be able to find it there somewhere. YouTube tutorials, if you have any requests for things you'd like to figure out, or we might even organise some more workshops or something like that, we might record them. This YouTube video, probably be up there. I would love to organise game jams around this once we get to a certain point, so if there's enough people using it, it'd be really cool just to get a location somewhere for, you know, half day or a day and just see what people can come up with. And I guess longer term, I mean, so we're a company, we're trying to make money out of this thing as well, so we're going to be releasing our own kind of commercial games based on this. One thing I'd love to do eventually, and probably take a long time to get there, but with like a fungal bundle where you take everyone's kind of games, you know, maybe the kind of more professionally developed ones or whatever, put them into a bundle and sell it on the App Store. I think that'd be really cool. And yeah, so say thanks. And you can download it from GitHub now. Obviously, there's a problem with that URL. And if you want to contact me, just drop me an email, Facebook, Twitter, or our website. Just get in touch. Very accessible. And I'd love to hear from you guys.